Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Riverfront. This is episode number 471 of the world's most dangerous podcast, where we discuss the Cincinnati Reds and occasionally Ryan Lavarnway. I'm your host, Chad Dotson. With me this week, once again, the Podfather, Bill Lack. How are you, Bill?
It's 70 degrees here in Cincinnati. Which is dream of opening day weather, but it's usually 40 degrees on opening day. So, by this time next week, it'll be like freezing cold.
That's right. So enjoy it now, right?
That's right.
Before the long, cold summer begins.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
So this is, this is the show we talk about the Reds. Before we go further, if you're watching on the YouTubes, hit that button, the like button, smash the subscribe button. There's a little bell as well. You can get the notifications. But if you're listening to the audio version, I don't understand why you wouldn't subscribe. You could have my dulcet tones delivered straight to your phone, into your ears every single week, everywhere you find podcasts. Nate is not here today, Bill. As we talked about last week on the show with Carlos, Nate got himself married. So we've been in Puerto Rico for his wedding, and it went wonderfully, and he's still gallivanting about the Caribbean, leaving all the hosting duties to me. So screw him, essentially is what I'm saying. But Puerto Rico, my.
If he's in the Caribbean, the heck with him.
Exactly. And that's what he's saying about us too.
He's sipping a rub drink with his bride.
Exactly. No, beautiful. My first time in Puerto Rico. And let me tell you what was interesting about it is in the airport, we flew into San Juan, and on the right end, billboards everywhere, advertising World Baseball Classic watch parties. I mean, you talk about excitement over the World Baseball Classic, man. We see it all over the world, different countries, but we saw it firsthand in Puerto Rico. And Nate happened to be down there. He got there a couple of days before I did, and he was in San Juan during one of the Puerto Rico games. And he said he's never seen anything like it. People are just in the streets screaming, chanting, and singing. And he said it was amazing. Did you watch any of the World Baseball Classic?
I watched a little bit when the United States was playing. I watched the semifinals. I watched a couple minutes of the finals. I didn't see a whole lot of it. I do like your South Virginia Spanish accent for Puerto Rico.
El Gringo.
You didn't try that in Puerto Rico, did you?
I did not. No. So the World Baseball Classic, I said last week I couldn't get into it. Really, I was having a difficult time getting into it. Well, I did watch the final between the U.S. and Japan, and oh my, that was fun. I wish they would. We're not going to talk much about the World Baseball Classic, but man, I wish they would figure out a way so that all the greatest players in the world can play, so that America had pitching, and they don't have it. Doing it right now in the spring is not the time to do it, but it's difficult to do it later as well. I understand, but man, I wish, because it could be a really fun event if all the greatest players were playing. Because watching that final at bat, Ohtani versus Trout. I mean, that's good stuff, and you like to see that. But
the semifinal between Cuba and Japan was an amazing game, and a walk-off. I mean, what are you gonna do?
Right? Yeah. So maybe one of these days they'll get that figured out. But it's going to be back in 2026, they say.
Count your minutes.
All right, this is the last episode before opening day. As always, we record these on Thursday night. And so next Thursday will be opening day of the Major League Baseball season. Of course, we will have one episode of the Late Night Reds, our live show, on Sunday night. But since this is the last one, I thought we would there's a number of burning questions still at play for the Cincinnati Reds as the season starts. And so I thought we would address those questions by throwing open the mailbox and getting some questions from our viewers and our friends, both at patreon.com/riverfrontcincy and at twitter.com.
And this is the last week. This is the last week where we can have hope.
No, not true. Not true. The Reds will be 4-2 after their first 6 games. That's my guarantee to you, the listening and or viewing.
Are you betting a tattoo on this prediction?
No, I'm not.
Oh,
I'm
okay.
not betting.
You're not that sure of this.
Well, I tell you what, if they go 20-6, I'll get a tattoo. How about that?
All right. I don't think you got to worry about anything, but okay.
No, there are some real concerns. There's some things I'm excited about. I'm very interested to see how certain players do. And so, I thought we'd throw open the mailbag as a way to address some of these questions and hopefully get around to everything that we need to discuss. Before we get into all that, though, I do want to ask you, because we didn't get a question about this, but I'm going to ask the question. First question comes from Chad at DotsonC on the Twitters. Did you see Nick Krall's comments on Joey Votto this week? And is it a controversy or a non-traversy?
Yes, I did see them. And I think it's a non-traversy. I think it's Krall saying what he should say as the GM of the Reds. I think there is no way in the world that Joey Votto plays for the Cincinnati Reds next year for $20 million. I think there's more of a chance that he gets traded so they don't have to pay the $7 million for him to walk off.
The comments were Nick Krall, or Cincinnati Reds general manager Nick Krall, basically said the plan is for Joey Votto to finish his career as a Red, but if they're out of it at the trade deadline, Votto came to him and asked if they would trade him home to Toronto. He said he would consider those under those circumstances. And so some people, because people like outrage these days, got up in arms about him saying that. And I think he probably shouldn't have said it, but it's so harmless. It's absolutely a non-traversy. We make fun of Nick Krall talking all the time. I think I would prefer him just say, we want him to finish his career as a Red. And what he said was the truth, essentially. He wasn't lying to us. And I think maybe just for PR purposes, I wouldn't have added the part, but we would do that because I would want to lean into, he's a team legend. We want him here forever. But, come on. Yeah, if they –
well,
the Bengals,
and I don't know how this was brought to him. Was he addressing a question that was put to him?
Yes. So,
yes. I mean, and if he says we want him to be a Red forever, well, then the people that want to be upset are going to say, well, what about Joey's feelings? What if Joey wants to go to Toronto? So there was no way to answer that question that you weren't going to piss off a fair amount of the constituency.
It's like politics. You can't say anything without somebody screaming at you. Yeah,
it's like being on a school board, man.
Oh yeah, no, thank you.
All the time.
Right. It's a complete non-traversy. I think there are three ways this goes for Joey Votto. I think probably it's 60-40, 70-30, maybe 80-20 even, or more. I don't know. That Votto's last year with the Reds will be this year. I think if he plays well, I would not be surprised to see him be willing to renegotiate that buyout to stay in Cincinnati. Or I could see him wanting to go. It does mean something to him to play his entire career with the Reds. He said this a number of times. He said this one, the one time that I got a chance to interview him, he really cherishes that full career with one team. And so I could see him renegotiate to stay with the team. But he won't be here. You're right. They're not going to pick up that option. No matter how well he plays this year. And so he could be elsewhere. So I don't know.
I mean, I wouldn't say no matter how well he plays. If he has an MVP kind of year,
well, that's true.
They might think about picking it up. But even then, I would be, I see, like I said, I think there's a better chance of them trading him so they don't have to pay the $7 million than they do, just because we know how this ownership thinks. I mean,
well, and that's what we've seen the last. Yeah, I mean, they've been willing to cut bait. And
the Forbes list came out today, and average Major League value went up 12%, and the Reds spending went down how much?
1,000%.
Yeah, so
$1 billion. Reds valued at $1.2 billion. Essentially, is the Reds franchise value, and so what that tells me is the Reds should be able to put $1.2 billion into their payroll every year, right? That's how that works.
That's how it works.
I think that's how it works. Yeah. So come on, Castellini.
It just, I mean, when you got an asset that's worth $1.2 billion and you're pleading poverty, I mean, it's just silly. I mean,
it is, but I guess no need to relitigate that one today because.
Anyway, like I said, I hope Joey gets healthy and I guess we'll talk about that later, whether we think he's going to be ready for the start of the season. Cause I don't think there hasn't been any final decision made yet. I don't think on Joey. No. Nobody loves Joey more than we do here. But I am not as bullish on his being successful this year as I think you and Nate are.
I think I don't know if it's bullish. Maybe it's just,
optimism.
Optimism, wishful thinking. We love Joey. We don't want to bet against Joey ever again. Every time you think he's down and out, he comes back strong. And so I'm choosing the path of not doubting Joey Votto, I think.
Well, the other thing is, if the Reds are going to have any chance of being successful, Joey cannot be an anchor in the lineup.
Oh, that's true. Without question, that's true. But
I mean, there's little chance they're going to be successful this year, and I'm not sure what successful is for this team. You know, is 500? Would that be successful for this?
Oh goodness, team? Yes, yes,
I think so.
Yes.
Is 75 wins successful? I don't know.
I think probably that 75 and 87. So I think if you can avoid 90 losses, I think that's probably successful given the constraints that we have here.
We've also both said that there's zero chance that David Bell finishes this season as manager. Or have you changed? I don't know. Have you changed your position?
You know, I have one of my patented unpredictable changes of heart just about every day on every topic. So take what I say with a grain of salt. I think he's going to end up being a scapegoat at some point to deflect from ownership and management. So he'll be, if it starts to go really bad, it won't be his fault. It might be partially his fault, but it will not be primarily his fault because he can only play the hand that he's dealt. But yeah, I think there's I would bet that by the end of the season, there's an interim manager.
Yeah. So. And I'm not saying that David Bell is Joe Torre, but Joe Torre was not a bad manager in Atlanta and a great manager with the Yankees. You know,
right? You're a lot better. You're a lot better poker player if you got two aces in the hole, right?
Yeah,
than if you got 2 and a 7 offsuit.
And I think Sporky used to say that it's a lot easier to manage when you got Rose and Morgan and bench.
It's true. It's true. It's true. So, well, let's get to our burning questions here, if we could. But I guess actually, I'm gonna. We're hot. The Reds are red hot. I wish we had that video looped up, ready to play here. The Reds hot video from 1990. Again, I'm going to delay getting into the burning questions because I do have to welcome a new member of the Riverfront Cincy family. This is Nathan Kane. Nathan, of course, just joined the family at patreon.com/Riverfront Cincy. Welcome to the group, Nate. We were supposed to give you a shout out last week. I didn't do it because we had a different type of episode. We recorded a day early. And I thought, well, let's just wait and do it on our regular Thursday because of the wedding. And then I thought we were going to be able to, Nate and I were planning to record a brief podcast in Puerto Rico, but it didn't happen because we were otherwise occupied. Mostly he was otherwise occupied. I was taking it easy.
Pina coladas.
Yeah. Yes. So I could have done it. I had plenty of time to do it. I'd sat down there and read, one book after the other. But Nathan Kane. So Nathan, that's, it's the same name as our intrepid friend, Nate Dotson. And then Kane, the last name of the greatest soccer player in the world, Harry Kane. Okay. So, man, you have immediately become my favorite member of the Riverfront family. Welcome. And as always, we give you a position on the beer league softball team. And so you are basically the starting shortstop and the cleanup hitter because I love that name. So that's what I say. What do you think? Nathan Kane, what position do you have for?
I was thinking he was a really fast center fielder. Covered a lot of ground out there.
Okay. I'm going to have another one of my patented unpredictable changes of heart. He's Eric Davis in center field.
There you go.
Cleanup hitter, can cover basically the entire outfield by himself. And you can bat him leadoff or cleanup. Eric Davis.
I like it.
All right, first question comes from Seth Shaner. Seth says, the buzz around Reds spring training 2023 has mostly been about guys who won't be in Cincinnati on March 30th. Is the excitement about Green, Lodolo, and Ashcraft enough to help us overlook what could be a cringeworthy outfield situation? And then I'm going to take another question here because both these questions helps us get into a sort of a discussion of the final roster battles and the way this thing's going to play out. Next question comes from Joey Gaditza, our friend from Canada. Does Brandon Williamson break camp as the 5th starter and give me one reason to be optimistic about Kevin Newman and Chad Pender because I'm finding it difficult? Well, that question's going to be, I don't know, Joey, but let's talk a little bit about the roster and, we'll start with sort of the way Seth framed it. Excitement about Green, Lodolo, Ashcraft. I'll say this. If you're not excited about Hunter Green, Nick Lodolo, and Graham Ashcraft, where you been? Each of them in their last start in spring training, most recent start in spring training, were dominant. Graham Ashcraft was exactly Graham Ashcraft, 10 strikeouts, and his slider just looked unbelievable. And Grinello Lodolo both look incredible.
I think
as well.
Lodolo had 8 the other night, didn't he?
Yeah, yes, and just looked dominant. And yes, it's spring training, but still, we're getting close to the end where it's mostly big leaguers playing. But those guys are talented, and they've shown some growth. And let's just start with our excitement for the big three before we move on to anything else. How excited are you?
Very. Well, and if you're going to have any hope for the future of this franchise, you better be high. You better be high on these three guys, because they're going to be the stalwart, the bedrock of any next real good, any next better than average Reds team that comes down the pike in the next few years.
Yeah, I have a piece that's coming out in the print edition of Cincinnati Magazine, sort of comparing what the Bengals have done and how the Reds can, mimic what the Bengals have done. And it's a stretch maybe, but go buy a copy when it gets on newsstands here soon. One of the things that, I talked to Mo Egger, I just asked him a couple questions for the piece, Mo Egger from ESPN 1530. And one of the things he said that I thought made a lot of sense was this. It sort of correlates with what you just said, Bill, which is that if you ask any team, if you're starting fresh and you could have those three as kind of your core pitching staff for the next few years, just about any team would take it. If you could build around those three. I mean, you do have to build around them. That's the point. And we'll see if the Reds actually get around to doing that. But there's no question whatsoever that is a strong trio of kids. And I'm thrilled to see what happens to them.
Well, and like you said about building, at least these three, we've already seen them have some success in the big leagues. Now, whether it's going to continue to elevate, we all hope it does. But the other kids that we're talking about, we haven't seen any success in the big leagues, even the ones that have been up here for a little bit. Barrero and Steer, and I'm not putting India or Stevenson in that packet because they've been up here a couple of years. But
right. No, thank you for that. You're exactly right. This is not Ellie De La Cruz, who we all think has every opportunity to be a superstar. These guys have they been all-star level in the big leagues? No, not yet, but they were rookies, essentially. And so, but they have demonstrated on the big league level that they can not just do well, but that they can take a punch and come back, and learn and adjust. And so that's why I'm thrilled to see those. Now, the other part of that question is it enough to help us overlook what could be a cringe-worthy outfield situation? Before we talk about that outfield situation, I'm going to actually merge Joey's question here because we've talked about the big three starters. I want to talk about who the last two are. Joey said, does Brandon Williamson break camp as the fifth starter? I'm concerned about the back end of this rotation. Now, most teams don't have a great back end of the rotation, but the Reds are so thin. We found out this week that Luke Weaver, who presumably was signed and promised an opportunity to compete for the rotation, although I'm not sure what he's ever done to have been penciled in there in the big leagues, but he's going to start the year on the injured list, not going to be ready. And so, the question starts to become who the Reds going to bring, I guess, east with them. I started to say bring north because they don't train in Florida anymore, but will Williamson be one? Here's my guess is Luis Cessa is the number 4 to start the season.
That would be my guess.
Yeah, Luis Cessa left the World Baseball Classic, left Team Mexico to come back to compete for that spot and that was right before the Luke Weaver news broke that he announced that. So presumably he had some knowledge of that. And I think Williamson probably is, by the time the Reds need a fifth starter, Williamson probably is that guy. But I tell you, I think he's got big talent, but
I think it's Overton. Excuse me just a second. It was getting dark. I'm turning my light on.
Good.
That was an idea. Did you see that idea come on over my head there?
I'm going to actually ask. I can see you better now. Could you go turn that off again, please? So I think it's going to be Brandon Williamson because he has the upside, and because Overton has looked so bad this spring.
I would like them to go the way that you're talking. I don't think they will. I think they might go to Anderson, who I think I read about today is still in the mix.
He is, although not on the 40-man roster.
Yeah, but there's not like there's not places to cut on that 40-man.
There's 10 spots of dead weight.
Yeah, but I think it'll be one of the. I don't think they're going to. I don't think they think Williamson's ready yet. I think he starts the year in Louisville, but I would be surprised if he isn't up here by June 1st.
Yeah, that could very well be what happens. Those are the guys that are in the mix essentially. Maybe we shouldn't. I'm always saying don't look at spring stats, but Connor Overton had 4 good starts last year, and that was essentially it. But the problem is if he and Chase Anderson are your other options, I think I just assume to see Brandon Williamson get a shot because those are bad options for the 5th spot.
Well, and that 4th and 5th spot may just end up being, by the time next week rolls around, it may be last man standing.
That's what worries me. You get a guy or two hurt, especially there's so little depth in the pitching staff that we better pray that Hunter Green, Nick Lodolo, and Graham Ashcraft can stay healthy. And believe me, I am praying that Hunter Green stays healthy. But
you end up with Strickland in the starting rotation.
Oh gosh. I thought we had a strict do not mention Hunter Strickland policy on this show. So that gets us back to the rest of Seth's question, which is the outfield situation. I guess as good a time as any to talk about the outfield situation. I think essentially what we have right now, there are 2 guys that are absolutely going to be in the outfield on opening day. Okay. And that's going to be Will Myers, and that's going to be Jake Fraley. After that, there are some real questions. I think the 3rd primary starter should be Will Benson, who the Reds acquired, obviously, from the Guardians in the offseason, a former first-round pick. I think he's going to make. I think he and TJ Friedl are going to make the roster in the outfield. I think Benson probably going to get the primary shot at that, just based on his upside at that center field spot. And then after that, it's guys like Chad Pender. I mean, what?
Well, have they said for sure that Senzel is not going to be on the opening day roster?
Yes, David Bell did say Nick Senzel is not going to be on the opening day roster. Now, that said, Senzel appeared yesterday.
And he's in the starting lineup tonight.
In a game. And he's in the starting lineup tonight at 3rd base. So, Nick Senzel will be on the roster at some point. And he's worked out at second base before games. He played all 3 outfield positions essentially. So he can play 5, 6 different positions if he could shortstop. And that may be his only path to really get to play much this year at all if he doesn't hit. But of course he's hurt again, and so he has to get healthy.
The David Bell said if Nick Senzel's healthy, he's one of the best players on the field. That was a quote in the Enquirer.
Is that from a quote from this year or from 5-6 years ago?
Within the last couple of days.
No, that was like 6 years ago, right?
I do have a bone to pick with your brother though about a coach. I haven't been on in a while, so I've stored all these things up from when I listened.
This is the airing of grievances.
That's right. A while back when you guys were talking about Senzel, Nate said that he felt like Senzel had no pressure on him because everybody's kind of given up on him. And I think it's exactly the opposite because this is his last chance. If Senzel doesn't do anything this year, he will not be with this team. He may not be with this team by July 1 if he is in effect. No, that's not true. He'll be here this year unless they unload him to somebody.
Right.
But, when Nate said that, he felt the pressure was off Senzel, I felt like it was exactly the opposite. If nothing else, it's compounded.
A couple things there. Number one, this is the 3rd year that this is Nick Senzel's last chance. This is the 3rd consecutive year of that. The second thing is I just presume that I'm going to disagree with everything Nate says when he says it. And so I've just lost the fire to attack him and to counter him every single time he says something completely and utterly insane. So
silly. It's just something silly.
Yeah, just completely silly. All right. Give me one reason to be optimistic about Kevin Newman and Chad Pender, Joey asks. Yeah, that's something I can't do. Absolutely not. All right, next question.
Why do they say so many? What is it about Chad Pender that they say so many good things? The manager of Oakland praised him to and the Reds, think the world. He's one of those, tools. He fits in anywhere. He can play anywhere. He can't play any of them well, but he can play anywhere.
He's a non-roster invitee. I don't know why he's even still here.
He's going to make this team.
Oh
If Senzel is not ready opening day, Pinder will be in that spot.
No, I think I agree with you. And that's, well, again, we're talking about the last guy on the bench, so why get too upset about that? But when you're the last guy on a really bad bench, that's not saying much. I think you're right, though. I think he's probably here.
Do you think he's the last guy on the bench, or do you think somebody like Molly or Maley or however you pronounce it?
Luke Maley?
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I guess it's Maley. I guess.
I don't know. Are you 25 or 26? What does it really matter at that point?
You're just on the roster at that point, so your mom can be happy. That's
collecting that big league paycheck.
The other thing, and good for him, more power to him. The other thing that I think in terms of the final roster battles, we talk about the back end of that bullpen, but back into that starting rotation, but this bullpen, I'm terrified about this bullpen.
I don't even know who it's going to be. I have no idea who's going to end up in that bullpen.
It's going to be Alexis Diaz and a cast of thousands. I mean, it literally could be if somehow Sessa's in the bullpen, he's dependable. But
Diaz and Alexis the seven dwarfs.
Yes, there we go. I mean, I don't. I'm telling you, this is the. We can squint our eyes and see the Reds being able to score some runs. You really can. You have to have some guys. Joey Votto has to come back, and you have to have some production from a guy like Will Benson, maybe, and whatever. But you can see it. You can rationalize that. The rotation, well, the 4 and 5 spots are going to be rough. But if you got 3 great starters, you can sort of see how they could keep the Reds competitive. 3 out of every 5 games, and that's pretty good. This bullpen, I can't see any way, and I hope I'm wrong because you never know with these bullpens. Sometimes people will have these crazy good years out of nowhere. But I mean, we're looking at besides Alexis Diaz, Buck Farmer's I think going to make it. Ian Jabot is going to make it. Reaver San Martin, I think probably is going to be one of the. I think there'll be 2 lefties in the bullpen. One will be Reaver San Martin. The other, I think, is going to be Alex Young. Alex Young.
And he's looked good. I mean, I know it's spring training, but he's looked good.
Yeah, no, and he, he's a guy that when they picked him up, you sort of look at his numbers and be like, oh, that might be somebody that can help. Yeah, absolutely. The problem is when I was being hopeful over the offseason about the bullpen, I was depending on the Reds having a pretty solid trio of Fernando Cruz, TJ Antone, and Lucas Sims. Well, more news from this week. Lucas Sims will not be on the open day roster. He's going to be on the injured list, not going to be ready to start. So, and TJ Antone, we've already talked about not going to be ready. So,
Santillan's not going to be ready.
And Tony Santillan, another guy. Yeah, I was thinking about guys like Santillan and Ian Jabot being sort of your middle guys, middle relief guys. And now all of a sudden, Jabot maybe your 8th inning guy. It's really or Young maybe, but I mean you got other guys like Joel Kuhnel, Bennett Sousa, who I would love to see make the team, but probably not going to. Cruz. What's going to happen here? What's that? Cruz. Fernando Cruz. Yeah. Fernando Cruz. And then the guy that I think is absolutely 100% going to be on the opening day roster, and it just makes my head hurt. Hunter Strickland is going to make the Reds opening day roster.
It was never a doubt. It was never a doubt that he was going to make this team.
It's outrageous. I mean, he's a better pitcher than me. I mean, without question, he is a better pitcher. He's a better pitcher than 99.9% of human beings walking on this earth. He is not better. He is not. Well, anyway, I'm not going to get on here and smash Hunter Strickland too bad. Wrong Hunter. That bullpen could be. We've seen some bad bullpens in recent years. This could be as bad as any of them. Or maybe not. Maybe Ian Jabot, coming off his World Baseball Classic, where the tee fell off his uniform, those Great Britain uniforms they had, and he's had a decent spring, and he was okay at times last year.
One of the wives made those jerseys, I think, in her little Etsy shop.
Yeah, I don't know. Those are the worst uniforms. Oh my goodness, that's embarrassing. If I were on Great Britain's team, I'd be so embarrassed. You can go to. I think I said it last week on the show, but my son on his travel ball teams had a better uniform every year, and sometimes they had 2 different uniforms or 3 different uniforms because they're crazy. They look better than the Great Britain in the World Baseball Classic.
It's like when Boughton was talking about the Seattle Pilots uniforms when they said they wouldn't come out of the dugouts the first time they played the Yankees because their uniforms were so ugly.
Right.
It was the opposite way. They were so gaudy and
right. Yeah, they weren't plain Jane like
Britons.
Great Britain's. Look like they're made in a Microsoft Paint app or something. All right. Next question comes from James Urban. James says, first, how about that WC finale? Travel time for the final out. James, where you been? We already talked about that. Why are you going back to what we already talked about?
Try to keep up.
Could not have script. Yeah, come on, James. Keep up. To James's credit, he only asked one question this week, so he's back in my good graces. Could not have scripted that any better. Incredible. My question this week, who will be the first Reds prospect to get called up from the minors this year? First Reds prospect to get called up from the minors this year. I think it's going to be Brandon Williamson. And I already said that he's going to be their fifth starter to start the year, but I'm presuming they won't need a fifth starter for a few days. And so I think they'll send him down initially and then bring him back up when it's time for a fifth starter. So that's my guess. Do you have any other thoughts?
I don't have a better answer. No.
I wish it were Ellie De La Cruz. Does Spencer Steer count? No, he was up last year.
He was up last year.
Still a prospect.
Have they said for sure that De La Cruz is starting in Louisville yet? Has that decision been made?
He was sent to the AAA camp.
Yeah, but
so they've not officially.
Yeah, because I remember when Matt was down there, in spring training they generally started a level up and then moved him down because Matt started in AAA camp a lot of years and ended up in the AA camp.
And of course, you're talking about friend of the podcast, former Reds farmhand Matt Klinker.
Matt Klinker of
Furman. Yeah, it's a possibility. University. What's that?
Of Furman University.
What does that mean? What does that mean, Bill?
It means he went to Furman. It means
what
he
went
to Furman. I'm not saying it.
Why would you mention the Furman? Why would you mention them? I don't understand.
Know. It just came to mind.
Anyway, you caused me to lose my train of thought now. It's possible Ellie De La Cruz will not start at AAA. I think he will. The reason I lean towards AAA is because they did send him there, whereas they sent Noelvi Marte to the AA, essentially AA camp. And but they sent him there because he's going to be playing third base. And so he's working on his third. That's where he'll be to start the season. I think working a new position. They still could send Ellie De La Cruz to AA, but I don't know why you would. I mean, I don't see any reason not to start him at Louisville and see how he does.
Did he finish in AAA last year? I've lost track. Or did he finish in AA? I can't remember.
He finished in AA.
Okay. And McLean's also playing shortstop at AAA, right? Or are they talking about him at second base or third base?
Or center field? I don't know. That'll be really interesting to see what they do there. I think probably your best bet if you're going for position players as the first one prospect to be called up, probably Matt McLean.
Yeah.
I think he's probably the closest. Although you could see a scenario where it's Christian Encarnacion Strand as well, just if they need a first base DH for whatever reason.
That squares the ball up. It seems like every time he swings the bat.
Gosh, that guy's, I don't know how good he's really going to be.
I don't either, but he was fun to watch in spring training.
Well, and he's evidently done that. He's with Minnesota before, and he's one of these guys that you always hear about over the years. You could roll him out of bed at 3 a.m. and he could put the bat on a ball, Don't know if he can play anywhere in the field, but if the Reds need another bat, I'd see him getting a shot, certainly based on the way he played this spring. Kyle Kapler, our friend Kyle, did not limit himself to one question, so I'm going to have to ban him from our Slack chat. Kyle asks, which is more important going forward for future success for the Reds franchise and why? Here are your 3 options. Most important or more important for future success for Reds franchise and why? 3 options are the players, the management, or ownership. Which is going to be the more important going forward? Well, you can make a good argument at all those. You can't be, for future success, you can't be successful if you don't have the players. But can you get the players without management or ownership? I think I probably lean towards management. Having, whatever you think about Krall, and I'm not directing this at Krall, but make sure that you have someone there that can fashion a roster under the limitations that ownership gives you. I think that's the most important thing going forward because I don't think we're going to get an ownership change. I hope I'm wrong. probably
it wasn't the question though whether it had to do with an ownership issue, which is the most important.
Well, the answer is players. I think if that's the question, players are obviously the most important. You have to have good players.
I would say for short-term success, players; for long-term success, ownership. Because if and this is an argument that we've been having for a number of years, if ownership doesn't have a consistent plan, if they jump around like a frog on a frying pan, as this organization has done for philosophy of operating a team, you're never going to be successful, and we've seen that.
Yeah, I mean, if you could get I don't know, Mark Cuban to come in and buy the team, wonderful. Jeff Bezos, come buy the team. Somebody like that that'll spend some money, and that's obviously the best way to ensure future success. We just not had a good owner in Cincinnati in forever. I did hear I'm going to start beating this drum. I'm going to write a column about this at some point. One of our friends, Amy on Twitter, Amy Editress, at Amy Editress, big Reds fan. And she has had this idea that David Letterman should buy the team because, hopefully he'll be a good owner. He's doing the IndyCar or whatever circuit. He's been a team owner for a while, but if nothing else, he'd be entertaining. And so I like the old David Letterman show. So yeah, maybe be entertaining for guys of my generation, I guess. So
yeah, I guess Johnny Carson couldn't buy for my generation. I guess Johnny Carson couldn't buy the Reds. Huh?
No, he's probably out. So I don't know. Yeah, I think you make an argument for all those.
Yeah, I think you can make an argument between short term and long term.
Yeah, right. It might be a different answer, but it's a good question, and it's sort of 6 of one, half dozen of the other. Kyle also asked Jose Barrero for Ian Anderson from the Braves. Who says no? Remember, prospects and spring training stats do not matter. Well, I don't know that either of those guys are prospects anymore. They have been in the past, and if the question is Ian Anderson of the Braves, obviously, a right-handed pitcher who, has had some success over his career. Not a ton. He was really good in short term at age 22 for Atlanta in that 2020 season, but pretty good actually the year after. Not great last year. Ian Anderson, please give me Ian Anderson. I mean, if you could trade Jose Barrero for Ian Anderson, Ian's going to be turning 25 this year, and plug him in with those big three. Oh my goodness, it's not even close. And I'm not sure what the comment from Kyle about prospects and spring training stats do not matter. Well, spring training stats don't matter. And I don't trust any prospect till he performs on the big league level. But Ian Anderson has performed on the big league level. He's already put up almost 4 wins above replacement before age 25. So, please, Jose Barrero is just unfulfilled promise.
He fit real well with those other. Now, this is the Ian Anderson on the Braves, not the one that did thick as a brick, right?
I have no idea what you're talking about.
Jethro Tull, Ian Anderson. Oh my!
Who did Jethro Tull play for? Seattle Pilots. I know who Jethro Tull is, but I don't know much about Jethro Tull.
Ian Anderson was the lead singer and flute player in Jethro Tull.
Okay, there you go. Not a Jethro Tull fan. I'm mostly listening to nothing but Bruce Springsteen these days.
I heard you. I heard of it. I heard that. I heard you were going to go see him on Broadway.
Yeah, absolutely can't wait. Yeah. But when I listen to Bruce Springsteen, I really just listen to one song on repeat. 2 songs. Obviously, the greatest Bruce Springsteen song of all time, "Glory Days." Listen to that on
I knew that
repeat.
was your favorite. I knew.
Oh yeah, but I also like to listen to "Dancing in the Dark" because I like to do that dance that he does on the video with Courtney
Cox. Yeah,
Courtney Cox. Yeah, so that's more Springsteen than I wanted to discuss today.
I didn't bring him up. You brought him up. I was talking Jethro Tull.
You still haven't told me who he played for. Brandon Kamick. This is a question that I'm excited to talk to you about.
Okay.
Do you because we've had an offline conversation a little bit about this. I want to get your take. Brandon says, do you expect to see significant differences in contact and stolen bases this year with the new rules? I'm assuming Will Benson will steal at least 120 bases. Well, yeah, Will Benson's going to steal at least 120 bases, no question. Will Benson is my new favorite player. I love me some Will Benson. He will steal at least 120 bases, probably 150. Now, the conversation I want to have with you is about the new rules, but to answer that question, do you expect to see significant differences in contact and stolen bases with the new rules? I think we will see both of those. And I think when you say significant, it depends on what you mean by significant, but I think noticeable differences. Stolen bases will be up because of the larger bases and because of the rules on throwing over to first base and holding runners on. And also, I think in terms of contact, I don't know how much the shift will have to do with it, with people making more contact, but I do think the pitch clock will have something to do with it because you're going to have some of these relievers that have been coming in throwing 103 miles an hour that are not going to be able to throw max effort every pitch because of the pitch clock. So that's my thought. You can either answer that question or we can get into a larger discussion about the rule changes, Bill, because I know you have some thoughts.
Well, I wasn't on board when you and Nate talked about the rules a few weeks ago, and you knew how I felt about the clock because we had talked about that in other places. But I have to admit that after watching some spring training games, I don't hate the clock.
What?
But let me tell you, I want to hold back you going crazy on this. It's easy to like the clock right now in games that nobody cares who wins. When we get further along and games start getting decided by either pitches being rushed to the plate or shot clock violations, in a big game, especially late in the year, I don't think people are going to be as happy with the shot clock as they are now. Now, it is as I said, I don't hate it like I thought I would because I really don't, other than the fact that at times it feels like it's rushing the game to me. But I do think it's going to make a difference in games that count. And I think that's going to affect how people feel about it.
Well, let me say a couple of things there about that.
And I heard somebody had an idea that managers should get 2 waivers to waive off shot or pitch clock violations. And they'd save one, of course, for the very end of a ball game, and they could use another in the game. And I think that's kind of a good idea. I could probably get online with that. But
that's interesting.
But go ahead on the clock, and then I want to talk about the base running.
Okay. Here's first of all, when Nate and I had that long conversation, and we were pretty enthusiastic about the new rules by and large. You sent some very intemperate comments to us via text the following day, and it burned my eyes to read the harsh comments you had for our opinions. That may not be
pinheads, I think.
Something like that. But you clearly disagreed. I don't think you're wrong. I think that we can have a conversation about what the proper length of the pitch clock should be. I think that if it's 5 seconds, well, that's certainly way too rushed. And if it's a minute and a half, that's way too long. So there's some play there. There's some optimal point. Are we at that optimal point now? I don't know. And so I'm willing to engage in that conversation. I don't want games to go too fast, but I want them to be moving. I want the same amount of baseball, just in a more compressed time. And so I don't disagree with you about maybe it's not at the right point, or maybe it needs to be, or maybe we should have waivers or something. I'll say this, though. I don't think we will have very many what you call I like that shot clock violations in the regular season. I just think players are going to get used to it. That's what they saw in the minor leagues. Players got used to it, and so you didn't have those violations to decide games.
Could be. But now Major League Baseball is talking about making adjustments. Now, you run this thing for a year or two in the minor leagues, supposedly to get the bugs out. You run through it all spring training in the big leagues, and now you're going to make adjustments. It once again shows that the management of Major League Baseball doesn't have a clue.
Well, it makes you wonder. It does make you wonder, no doubt. Because you're right. They ran the experiment in the minor leagues, and I think it's been not universally, but it's been widely praised in the spring. And I think it's worked. And again, maybe you can tweak it some. I don't know. But yeah, I don't like this idea of tweaking it on the fly 2 days before opening day.
Right.
That's typical of baseball, of course.
But
you want to talk about the base running?
Yeah, just for a minute. Because and we've talked, you and I have talked for years. We're both big fans of the stolen base.
Absolutely. Makes the game more fun.
I absolutely agree. But I think that the rules that they have instituted are terrible. Because you make the pitcher and the catcher defenseless. All he's got to do is draw two throws and then he can go whenever the hell he wants because they're never going to go over there for that third pickoff.
Well, you can go for the third one, but you
got to
as
get
the rule
him.
states, you got to get him. You got to get him.
They're never going to do that. They've taken the balance out of the difference between offense and defense by limiting the number of throwovers that a pitcher can make. And I'm old enough to remember when Joe Morgan used to draw 8, 10, 12 throws to first base. And it had the pitcher all discombobulated out there. And then that benefits the guy hitting. And, you ask the guys that hit behind Morgan whether that helped them. They'll tell you it damn well did. So I think that this rule has destroyed the balance between offense and defense, and I don't like it. And I think if they were trying to get more stolen bases by making the bases bigger, that should have been enough. I don't want to turn this into a track meet.
I do. I want Willie McGee and I want Vince Coleman. I want those guys back.
I don't have a problem with guys that can do it on their own skill, but this isn't just on their skill. This is changing the rules to make it easier for them to do. Actually, it's making it almost impossible to throw them out.
It's funny. I don't know that I agree, but I think it's a valid point because I do like stolen bases. But yeah, it's sort of like with the pitch clock. There's a balance. Somewhere there's a tipping point where you're giving one side
I don't
too
think
much.
there should have been any limit to how many pitches an umpire can throw over. And that was the other thing. I'm going to go back for just to these adjustments that they're talking about. When Major League Baseball is talking about in their adjustments about what the ball boy and the bat boys are doing, then Major League Baseball has lost their mind.
And that was, well, you have to go Google it. But yeah, they came out with some new tweaks to the rules. Among those were we're going to be monitoring what the ball girls and the ball boys and bat girls are doing. If they're not doing their job quickly and efficiently enough, MLB could step in. Yeah. I agree completely. Again, it's MLB just clueless.
Yeah.
Just absolutely clueless about how that's going to play.
It'll be really funny when some bat boy gives an umpire the finger on national television.
Oh, please! I hope that happens.
One last thing on the rules, and that's the ghost runner thing. And I hate it. I hate it.
I'm with you on that one.
I hate it. I hate it. I hate it. It's not baseball.
I'll always hate that.
It's like you said. It's select baseball, so you can get out. So you can get out of the ballpark early.
Yeah. See, my thing is, I don't mind a 3.5 hour baseball game. I'll sit and watch it. I'll sit and have a hot dog and a beer, and I'll be happy. If they're playing baseball during that 3.5 hours, I don't want stepping out of the box and pitchers taking all day long. If they're playing baseball and it goes to 14 innings, but they're playing, I'm like, that's fun for me. I'll deal with that. And so, yeah, that's the one thing that I will never, I think I've had a pretty open mind on the rule changes here for an old crotchety guy like me. Because I think it improves the product on the field, and it doesn't. It may change the game just a tiny bit, but basically gives us, as I said before, more baseball in a little bit of a smaller time frame. I think that's fine, or not more baseball, but the same baseball, just a little compressed. But the extra inning rule, the ghost runner, again, as much as I said I loved it when my son and my daughter played in their travel baseball and softball, because it was fantastic. It was different then. After Game 7 on we're at midnight on a Saturday night, and I'm like, gosh, can we put 3 runners on in extra innings? I'm ready to go home.
And the weather's down to about 40 degrees.
Right. Or at 4 in the afternoon when it's 95 degrees. I'm like, oh, get us out of here. But yeah, that's one that you'll never convince me.
But those are my things on the rules, and like I said, I figured that would shock you that I've kind of turned around a little bit on the clock.
It does.
But I'm curious to see if people that are big fans of it right now are as big of fans when it costs important games are decided on pitch clock violations or batter not getting in the box at 8 seconds and it gets in at 7 seconds. Do you want the 7th game of the World Series decided by that?
Only if the Reds are the beneficiaries of it.
Well, of course, that goes without saying, right?
Right. No, I'm hopeful that we won't see much of that, if any of it at all, once games get started. But I'll agree, that'd be frustrating, and it's sort of why I've been very cautious in how I talk about this. I'm in favor of these rules changes by and large, but if you're not in favor of it, I get it. I get it. Don't send me angry texts about it. But if you want to tweet that you don't think that this is baseball, I get it, because we love baseball because it doesn't have a clock, really. And so, yeah, I can see why you wouldn't like that, but I don't look at this as the pitch clock, especially. I don't look at this like putting a clock on the game because you still don't have a clock. You still got to get 27 outs, and that may take 10 hours. It may take 3 weeks like cricket. Anyway, again, your mileage may vary.
I completely agree with what you're saying, though. As much as I've come around a little bit on some of these and still am adamantly against the other. I do think the base running thing changes the game, and I don't like the way it's changed it. The clock I don't think does, as much as the fact that, as I said, I'm concerned that if it starts deciding games, especially as we get later in the year and it's important games, I think then it changes it doesn't change the game itself, but it changes the way the games are decided.
Maybe.
We'll see. I mean,
I'm looking forward to seeing. I really am.
Yeah.
Next question comes from Eric at EP Redlegs, at EP Redlegs on the Twitters. Can you help us understand the contract effects of bringing guys up and starting the clock on their deals with the team? When can Elly De La Cruz be with the Reds and it not count as a year of service? I think they've changed the rules since Chris Bryant in Chicago. Now, I'm going to try to explain the service time rules as quickly as I can, as succinctly as I can. And if I screw it up, somebody I'm sure will yell at me either in the comments on YouTube or on Twitter or send me hateful texts. Feel free to yell at me. That's fine.
And it won't be me.
It won't be you this time. But before I do that, I'll say this. I don't think service time questions are going to come into play. At least I'm cautiously optimistic with any of these guys. And the reason why are Hunter Green and Nick Lodolo. The Reds in recent times have not shown a propensity since the PR nightmare of Nick Senzel. And of course, again, in retrospect, who knows? I'm not going to get into that again. I'm not going to relitigate that one. But I don't think Elly De La Cruz, if he's ready, I don't think he'll be held back for some artificial service time reasons. Same with McClain or any of these other guys. I think if they're ready, they need good players in Cincinnati, and they need the PR boost that Elly De La Cruz can give them. So I don't think there'll be a problem. The way that I understand the service time works is players essentially receive service time every day they spend on the active roster of a team. Or I guess if you're on the major league, if you get injured in the major leagues and you're on the MLB injured list, not the minor league injured list, you get a day of service time for every day that you're on that roster. And these dates are just used to determine when players are going to be eligible for arbitration, and then later on when they're eligible for free agency. So each big league regular season right now consists of 187 days. And I think that's one thing that changed. It was typically before back in the Chris Bryant, when it was a big thing with Chris Bryant, it was a different number, a little bit less. So each day gets 1 day of service time. And once you reach 1 year of service time, and that right now, when you accrue 172 days now, that's 1 year of Major League service time. So the way I look at that is if you wanted to play service time games, you got to basically keep them down for 16 days during the season. So not long. And you still have these things about 6 years of Major League service to be eligible, so you could delay that some. They still could become arbitration eligible depending on how good they are if they're a Super 2 player that I'm not going to get into. But it's watered down a little bit, and frankly, I just don't think it's going to be an issue going forward.
I also think it's not going to be an issue too, because you're already running the service time on Steele, Lodolo, and Ashcraft, and so keeping the rest of these guys in the minor leagues when you're burning time on the three guys that are your foundation doesn't make any sense anyway.
No, I really believe me. I understand more than anyone, Eric, your questions about this, because I've railed on this particular podcast many, many times about this nonsense, but it's not something I'm concerned about anymore. All right, next question comes from at Chris Brock 57. That's at Chris Brock 57. I'm going to tell you what his screen name is here, but I disagree with it completely. Nikola Jokic is a basketball god. Let me just tell you something. Joel Embiid's the best player in basketball. Joel Embiid is the best player in professional basketball. He's not the best player in college basketball. But this question, according to BetMGM, Ellie De La Cruz is plus 1,500. Spencer Steer is plus 1,800. And Christian Encarnacion Strand is plus 6,000 for National League Rookie of the Year. Is it worth it to throw a few bucks down on one or all of them? I know you're a betting man, Bill Lack. What do you think?
I'd throw 5 on all 3 of them and say, what the hell?
I think if I'm going to throw 5 down, I would probably actually throw 10 or 15 down on Steer. I think Spencer Steer is, I'm not predicting he's going to win the Rookie of the Year. Of those 3, I think he's has the best chance. And I think he could legitimately be in the mix for it because he's going to get the playing time in the big leagues from the beginning of the season. We don't know about De La Cruz and Encarnacion Strand. So Steer's going to have every opportunity.
Well, and you know, the projections all have him as being one of, if not the best hitter on this team.
Right.
You know, so who knows? But you know, if you're going to take a long shot bet on all 3 of them. Cover the field. You know.
There you go.
Then throw 5 down on the Reds to win the World Series. That'll make you some money.
Yeah. Oh, good.
I would say if that one hit, you could retire.
Yes, absolutely. Next question comes from Red Reporter. That's at Red Reporter on Twitter. Our friends from redreporter.com.
You know those guys.
Yeah, good guys. And by the way, just, you know, again, not that we're here to promote other podcasts, but they just kind of rebranded their podcast called Walks Will Haunt. Go listen to it. It's always a good. Wick Terrell and the crew over there. BK, they do a great job with that. If Ellie De La Cruz raced a cheetah in a 100-yard dash, would the cheetah need a 5-second head start or a 7-second head start? I love the question.
He would need Billy Bates to wrestle Ellie De La Cruz at the 5-yard mark.
I want to see obviously it's a 7-second head start, but I want to see Billy Bates come back and race against Joey Votto. That's what I want to see. Billy Bates has got to be 50-some years old at this point.
Or we can have Billy Bates race against Chris Collinsworth.
Oh, there we go.
Because Chris raced a racehorse one time.
That's right. So Billy Bates. I've got a T-shirt around here somewhere. That's Billy Bates versus the cheetah. I need to dig that out and wear it on one of these shows one of these nights. Good question. Next question comes from Sydney Price.
Is Billy Bates the most obscure Red ever that actually had an important position in Reds history?
Without question.
I mean,
he never played again after scoring the winning run in Game 2 of the 19 World Series. He never put on a Reds uniform again. Well, I guess he did in spring training, but he didn't put on the uniform the next 2 nights in that World Series. But what a great story. I love it. Sydney Price at Trans Cincy Fan. Will I regret being a season ticket holder? Oh, that's Sydney went with 2 questions. That's heavily frowned upon here in this space, Sydney. Will I regret being a season ticket holder? And can this team have a player hit 20 home runs? Can this team have a player hit 20 home runs? Absolutely. I think Joey Votto is going to hit 20. Will Benson's going to hit 20. Jake Fraley's going to hit 20. Jose Barrero's going to hit 20. Tyler Stevens is going to hit 20. Will Myers going to hit 20, and Spencer Steer. They're all going to hit at least 20.
Myers may hit 20, and only maybe 15 here. The other 5 may be somewhere else. But
that's right, but whatever. He'll hit 20. The other question, will I regret being a season ticket holder? And 2 points I want to make here about that. Number 1, you will not regret being a season ticket holder because it's fun to go hang out at the ball yard. I mean, the baseball is going to be bad probably most of the time, but I've never had a bad time at the ballpark. So no. That's my answer. The other part is, did you see, Bill, as we're talking about this, opening day is not sold out yet. What do you think about that?
I actually looked to see where, because there's been a lot of talk about this. I looked where the seats are available, and th're way up down in the ends, in the corners, and I mean, so there aren't a whole lot of seats left. But yeah, I did see that. And whether you're going to regret having season tickets, I would say no, because there's really good players on all the other teams too. Right. I may want to go see San Diego play because that's my new favorite team.
Yeah, they're amazing. I will get my Padres cap here in a moment. Yeah, they're fun to watch. That's the thing. You get to see all the other stars around baseball, and you get to see Joey Votto in what may be his final season. Enjoy it. And again, you have Tyler Stevenson, you have Jonathan India, and Hunter Green. No, you will not regret. Some days it's going to be ugly. You're going to have those days when, Chase Anderson's your starting pitcher, and then he's going to be relieved by Hunter Strickland
in the 3rd inning.
Right. And yeah, those days are not going to be fun.
And there may be a lot of days when you want to leave at like in the 6th and 7th inning.
Yeah.
So you don't have to watch the bullpen.
Yeah. Go over to the Holy Grail and just wait it out there. But No, absolutely not. And about opening day, you know, I'd laugh a little bit about what Phil Castellini's done, his PowerPoint,
Sad.
you know,
Sad.
causing the Reds not to sell out opening day. But the fact of the matter is, if you want to go to, I'm have my little boycott thing that I'm still doing. But if you want to go to opening day, listen, I've been to probably 10, and it is a blast every single. I've been in the snow, I've been in great weather, and it has been fun every single time. So go have fun, enjoy it. Opening day is still, it's not what it used to be because of what the Castellins have done, but it's still a fun time, still a special day.
There's no day. I've never been to an opening day anywhere else but here. But as you said, I've never been to a bad opening day. I've been to days that they played bad, but I've been to days where I froze my butt off. I was down there one time, but it hadn't been for that flask of schnapps, I don't think we'd have made it through. But that was against the Expos. I remember that game.
And Sydney, you may want to take a flask with you on some of these days.
Yeah, you may need a flask on some of those days. The only thing is now you got to go through a metal detector, so you got to have to have a plastic flask.
Some of us own a plastic flask or two.
Okay. I've got a fake leg that
Hey, I got an exclusive picture of Phil Castellini at last year's opening day before you go further. This is Phil Castellini at last year's opening day. If you're not on YouTube, you can't see him saying, "Get in, loser, we're cutting payroll." My favorite meme ever. Anyway, anything else you want to say about opening day? I felt like I cut you off there.
No, but like you said, there's no such thing as a bad opening day. I've been down there in the rain, like you said. I've been in the rain and the snow, the cold. I've been down there when I left the house, it was 40 degrees and it was 75 by the time we get down there, and you're peeling layers but it's always a good time. It's a different feeling on opening day than it is any other day. You also see more people down there that aren't really baseball fans than you do any other day too. But
it's true. Yeah, you're not going to see the hardcore guys. They're usually not just guys, but you know what I'm saying, the hardcore fans. But it's a different crowd. But man, it's just a blast. And I always think back to the year that Adam Dunn had a couple of home runs and Joe Randy hit the walk off. And I'm like, this is heaven to me. This is baseball heaven. This beautiful park, which I still love, Great American Ballpark. And you'll have a good time.
Absolutely.
All right. Next question is this. Comes from Joe Farsing. Jimmy Haynes was no Scott Feldman.
Could you try again?
Discuss. As Siri yells at me on my, I don't know if y'all heard that. Jimmy Haynes.
That's what Siri was saying. Did Jimmy Haynes try again? That's what Siri just said.
Right. Who? Man, only Joe. We're talking optimistically about a lot of things here. The big three starters, and you got to bring Jimmy Haynes.
I know why Joe said this, because Joe saw in the Enquirer they listed like the opening day starters for like 15 years in a row in Cincinnati.com, and it was Anderson and Haynes and Feldman and other names that don't immediately come to mind.
I have it's no longer on my office wall, but it was my last wall. I just haven't put it back up yet in my new office. But I had a panoramic photo of Great American Ballpark, first pitch at Great American Ballpark. And right in the center on the mound is Jimmy Haynes. So I've had a picture of Jimmy Haynes on my office wall for 15 years now. So I'm going with Jimmy Haynes.
You know what you should do? You should cut out Hunter Green and then
place him over top. Yeah, absolutely. Hooper Powell asks, besides you, of course, Chad, were there any celebrities at your brother's wedding? I am clearly a celebrity. No. There was a former UVA football player that was there, who I'm not going to mention, but I don't know if there are any celebrities. Although the way one of my other brothers danced, he could be a celebrity very, very soon. He is a fine dancer. It was not me. I'm not much of a dancer, but then again, I'm not much of anything.
We're gonna see him on ABC's. You think you can dance, or one of those shows here shortly?
Sure, why not? Last question comes from @RedsGM. @RedsGM, do you think Scott Hatteberg is a good player? Now, if you know what that's referring to, you win. If you don't know what that's referring to, how are you still listening to the show? Because you're clearly disloyal to the greatest player in Reds history. That's all I'm going to say. I'm not going to say any more about that question. So I'm not even going to answer the question, because obviously Scott Hatteberg's a good player. All right, Bill, I think that's about a good place to stick a pin into it. What do you think?
I think we've beat this to death.
I think we have. A couple of things that I want to note Before we get out of here, first of all, I mentioned Ryan Lavarnway earlier. Ryan Lavarnway announced his retirement from big league baseball after, 10 years. He played parts of 10 different seasons in the big leagues, but only played 165 total games. We will always remember Ryan Lavarnway for that glorious day in July of 2019 when he just his first game for the Reds on July 19. He was 3 for 4 with a walk, 2 home runs, a double, 6 runs batted in. Ryan Lavarnway, greatest catcher in Reds history. Enjoy your retirement, pal.
Yeah. And of his 19 plate appearances for the Reds.
Amazing. Just amazing. His first 5 were pretty good.
Went downhill after that.
It went a little downhill, but that's all right. He had a game in the big leagues that most people would dream of having.
That's a fact.
Sort of a somewhat not really a friend of the family, but the son of a friend of mine got to play in the NBA. One game, and he made a shot. I'm like, you know what? He scored in the NBA. I mean, and he may get another chance at some point. I hope he does. I'm not going to mention his name here, but if you ask me offline, I'll tell you who it is because I think he does have a chance. He's had some recent heroics that might get him back in the conversation. But that's what I said about Ryan Lavarnway. Dude, you played in parts of 10 different seasons. You barely played, but you were on the roster of a big league team for a decade off and on. Dude, enjoy it, man. That's a career that most people would like to have.
And you know what? He's got a hell of a pension for a minus 1.2 career wins above replacement.
That's right. Rock on, Ryan Lavarnway. The last thing I'll mention here is, I don't know if you saw it yet, Bill, but I don't want to go too deep into it, but I had to write about this week. And it's at my newsletter. Go to chaddotson.com for the newsletter. You can subscribe. It's free. Or don't. Whatever. It's garbage. But I found this little story that I had never heard before about Davey Johnson, Reds manager Davey Johnson.
I hadn't heard
Reds
this either.
Owner Mark Schott. And it was just, I was like, wait, how have I never heard this story? So I'm not going to say anything more about it. We can talk about Davey Johnson and Mark Schott all day long. But I thought it was a pretty cool story, Bill. So I need you to validate me.
I had never heard the story either, and I really enjoyed the article.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that, Bill. Finally, I forgive you for your hateful texts in the wake of recent podcasts. All right, this has been The Riverfront, episode number 471. I would encourage you, please, let's do our other shows around the Riverfront. Joe Farsing and crew. He had Chris Garber on recently, longtime friend of this show, and he does the Cincinnati or the Riverfront Bengal show. Great stuff. Free agency, draft coming up, all that. Going to be a fun offseason around the Bengals. I will say this, Bill, I'm glad to have you back on. I tried to get kind of a reunion this week of all of the old crew. I tried to invite Chris Garber and Jason Lynn. I was going to have all of us on here talking. But
when they found out I was coming on, they found something else to do.
That's what they told me privately. I wasn't going to say that.
I get that all the time. It doesn't even hurt my feelings anymore.
We'll get the old crew together at some point. I would encourage you also Sunday nights here at the Riverfront, late night Reds talk. Okay, we go live on Sunday nights. I'm going to try to join the crew this Sunday. John Sadak, Reds broadcaster John Sadak, was on last week. Always a fun time. It's a little bit of a different vibe. You got some interaction with people that are watching it live and answering questions live, and it's a really fun format. And I encourage you to listen to that Sunday night, 7 o'clock, or it's in our podcast feeds as well on both YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts. You can find us on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. We're at Riverfront Cincy, on all those platforms. And finally, a huge thank you to our supporters at patreon.com/RiverfrontCincy. The show would literally not be possible without the support of the family there. So come join us. Click the link in the show notes or patreon.com/RiverfrontCincy. Bill, this was fun, man.
Always fun. I always enjoy being here, Chad.
Yeah, love talking Reds with you. And this is when hope's at its highest. The Reds are undefeated.
Can't win them all if you don't win the first one.
Bingo. And the Reds this time next week are going to begin that march towards an unexpected division championship. Shout out to Adam Dunn. Shouts to Lisa Alberto and Wayne Krinchicki and Eli Cash for Bill Lack and Ryan Lavarnway. This is Chad Dotson saying so long, everyone.